Saraswati. And he was staying with Tapan Mishra Chandrasekhar. And then when he was there in their house, when Brahman came, and he said, "Oh, I am so disturbed because all these sannyasis are criticizing you." And Tapan Mishra and Chandrasekhar said, "It's very difficult." Well, they said it was very difficult. Then at that moment, by the arrangement of the omnipresent Lord, a Brahman came and invited him, Lord Chaitanya, well, I have an allergy from this. Allergic, yeah. To come to his house. To come to his house. He said, "Come to my house," right? Yeah, come to my house. And I am inviting all these sannyasis in Varanasi to come for some message. Yeah. I am inviting all these sannyasis in Varanasi to come to my house for lunch. Yeah. Which reminds us of another story. Okay. One time we were in the. Everybody can come through the garage.
Yeah, that's what.
Yeah.
We can close this.
Yeah.
Can you close this thing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we were we joined ISKCON in the temple in San Francisco, and one of our members was from Oakland, California, and his father was visiting. And he said when he was younger, they used to always invite sannyasis to come to their home. They were from Ramnuja, South India. So they invited this sannyasi who was traveling. He was very old, maybe like 38 years old or something. How old? 38. Yeah. And of course, in their Sampradaya Madhva, they take sannyas at like 11 years old or something like that. So Gangar Maharaj had one friend who took sannyas when he was 8 years old, and his danda would fit in his suitcase. His danda would fit in his suitcase, which made it very easy to travel. He was much older. So anyway, his father had invited this Madhvacharya sannyasi who was traveling to come and stay at his house. And then the sannyasi came for lunch. He came for lunch. And before the older fellow told us, he was asking the sannyasi's secretary, "Can I invite Maharaj for lunch?" And the secretary said, "Well, everybody else comes with him, all his servants and people like that, and so on. Are you sure you can feed everybody?" And then the older man said, "No problem. Everybody come. We'll take care of it." So anyway, the sannyasi came, and maybe 15 more people, and like that, and so on. And as soon as he came in, they received him, and he said, "Oh, I like this place. Bring my puja. I will stay here." So they do a lot of, very, very strict, detailed puja and mantras and everything else. So he was there, he was setting things up. And then they sent his cloth to be washed by some dhobi guy, dhobiwala. And it came back, and apparently the dhobiwala had been smoking while he was washing the sannyasi's clothes. Some super scent or psychic powers. But when the dhobi guy came in, was handing it to him, he looked at it, looked at the clothes, and said, "You were smoking cigarettes while you were, washing my cloth. I use it for puja." And he threw it on the ground and became completely irate. Started tearing his clothes off and laying him on the ground. And everybody was running and hiding. He was just so angry, And then he was marching back and forth on the veranda in his kopans, just furious, The person said that he and his wife and son hid in the closet other side. Everybody was afraid to come out, It was exactly like Lord Nrsimhadev after he killed Hiranyakasipu. So finally he had a flower garland, he gave it to his son and just pushed him out. He said, "Give this to the sannyasi," the little boy. So the sannyasi comes up and sees him, and he's holding the garland up, and he's glaring at him, and the boy's smiling and holding it up. So finally he took the garland. Okay. everything was more peaceful. And the Dobiwala came crawling on his stomach all the way from 2 blocks away and promised to never smoke ever again the rest of his life and so on. So these things are happening. So Lord Chaitanya was there in Varanasi, and all the Mayavadi sannyasis were criticizing him because he was simply associating with mad people and sentimentalists and chanting the holy names and those kind of things. And Chandrasekhar and Tapa Mishra just couldn't tolerate this, just can't handle this. So at that point the Maharashtra Brahmin came and said, I'm inviting all the sannyasis in Varanasi to come to my house for lunch. Okay. And Lord Chaitanya usually never accepted invitations from other Mayavadi sannyasis and things like that. So he accepted. Oh, okay. So they were all assembled there, all the Mayavadi sannyasis, three line sannyasis. Yeah. And Lord Chaitanya came in, of course, a very famous story, And then he sat down. Where? Where did he sit down?
The place where they leave the shoes and.
Yeah, all the people's shoes were washed in water and sat down there, and then he. What did he do?
He said,
He manifested Brahman effulgence. And of course, this is the greatest goal of all Mayavadi sannyasis, is the Brahman effulgence. And so Lord Chaitanya was manifesting it. And Prabhupada says everybody devotee who's following the process strictly has three things they can use in preaching. One is they have a very nice smile. Everybody should smile now. Okay. Yep. And he says, Charya attracts many people to his movement by smiling. Okay, so a nice smile. So smile at people. And smile at flowers. The second thing is they can do very, very nice kirtan. And the third thing is they're very effulgent. So these are things: nice smiles, good kirtan, and nice effulgence. And so it's Lord Chaitanya. This is how we use it in you meet people, you're chanting, you're talking. Yeah, this person's smiling, he's friendly, he's effulgent, and everybody else is gray and dull, and Yeah. So then Prakashananda Saraswati went over and said, Your Holiness, why are you sitting here in this dirty place? And he said, I come from an inferior class of sannyasis, and I cannot sit with you. And then he took him by his hand and personally sat in there. And then he said, you're so brilliant and everything else, and you belong to our Shankara Sampradaya. You're a disciple of Keshava Bharati, and therefore you're very glorious. But why is it that you don't study Vedanta? This is the sole duty of a sannyasi, to study Vedanta. How many people here have studied Vedanta Sutra? Nobody? Yeah. Yeah. I saw one time it was without commentary. Yeah. Inasmuch as thus. Next sutra. It was so concentrated. It was just, they had to put stuff in parentheses to make it something other than just nonsense syllables, Because it's for people who've already, studied all the Vedas, the Upanishads, the Brahmanas, the Aranyakas, and now they're studying Vedanta Sutra. And so concentrated. It's like, it's like finding the notes from a lecture on, postgraduate thermodynamics at the Caltech University, the notes, and trying to understand lectures about, yeah. So then you have to have commentaries, explanations, and so on. But that's what they said was the only goal of the, where is it here? Lost my place. Only goal of the Mayavadis, yeah. So they asked him, they said, well, why don't you study here? Okay. And find my place again. Typical labor-saving device. Causes you more labor than you did before. Okay. So, then he said, okay, where is this now? Okay, I'm going to go find on page, find fool. Okay, 72. I should do it. Might do it. Okay. So he asked him, why don't you study Vedanta? Why don't you stay with us? And these kind of things. Okay. Prabhu kahe. Shuna Shripad. Ihar karan. Guru more murka deki karila shashan. Okay. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu replied to Prakashananda, Saraswati, my dear sir, kindly hear the reason. My spiritual master considered me a fool, and therefore he chastised me. Murka tome, tomar nahika vedanta adhikar, Krishna mantra japa soda e mantra sada. You are a fool, he said. You are not qualified to study Vedanta philosophy. And therefore you must always chant the holy name of Krishna. Yeah? This is the essence of all mantras or Vedic hymns. And so Prabhupada said that he's indirectly, chastising the sannyasis there, that anybody who thinks they can understand Vedanta Sutra is really, confused. And it's about a 5-page purport. Krishna mantra haite habe samsara mochon. Krishna nama haite pabe Krishna racharan. Simply by chanting, his spiritual master told him, who is his spiritual master? Ishvarapuri. Simply by chanting the holy name of Krishna, one can obtain freedom from material existence. Indeed, simply by chanting the Hare Krishna mantra, one will be able to see the lotus feet of Krishna. Another 5-page purport. I think this is like chapter 7 is Lord Chaitanya and 5 features. And Prabhupada printed it as a separate book, before he published the Chaitanya Charitamrita. So it's a fantastic chapter, just incredible. Okay. Nama binu kali kale nahi aura dharm sarva mantra sarva nama e shastra marm. In the age of Kali, there is no religious principle other than the chanting of the holy name, which is the essence of all Vedic hymns. This is the purport of all scriptures. My goodness. After describing the potency of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, my spiritual master taught me another verse, advising me to always keep it within my throat. What is that verse? Huh? That's Lord Chaitanya's verse.
Okay.
Hare Rama, Hare Rama,
Hare Nama Iva Kevalam, Kalo Nastaiva Katiranyata.
For spiritual progress in this age of Kali, there is no alternative. There is no alternative. There is no alternative to the holy name of the holy name, the holy name, the holy name of the Lord. Is there some other way? Yeah. Okay. Then it talks about in different ages, different processes are effective. My gosh, unbelievable. These purports. Okay. Yeah. Since I received this order from my spiritual master, I have always chanted the holy name, but I thought that by chanting the holy name, I had become bewildered. Dharya dharite naro hoilam unmata, hashi kandi nachi goye yache madhumata. While chanting the holy name of the Lord in pure ecstasy, I lose myself. And thus I cry, laugh, dance, and sing just like a madman. Collecting my patience, therefore, I began to consider that chanting the holy name of Krishna had covered all my spiritual knowledge. I saw that I had become mad by chanting the holy name. So how many people here are chanting the holy name? Yeah. So what's going to happen?
You're gonna go mad.
You're all going to go mad. Not very intelligent. Bhaja Govinda. You know the Mahabudhara Stotra? Shankar
Shankaracharya, Bhaja Govinda.
Bhaja Govinda, Bhaja Govinda, Bhaja Govinda, Mudhamate, Samprate, Sanihite Kale, Nari Nari Bhutanatare Karane. Just worship Govinda. Just worship Govinda. Just worship Govinda. All you fools and rascals, all of your conditional is statements and endless doo-doops will not save you at the time of saving. That's what it's saying, basically. Yeah. I saw that I had become like a madman, and I immediately submitted this at the lotus feet of my spiritual master. So Prabhupada says, yeah, this is what happens. You're having some confusion, some problem, go to your guru. Okay. Kiba mantra dila goshani kiba tarabal japite mantra karine pagal. My dear Lord, what kind of mantra have you given me? I have become mad simply by chanting Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. Yeah? Chanting the holy name in ecstasy causes me to dance, laugh, and cry. When my spiritual master heard all this, he smiled and began to speak. It is the nature of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra that anyone who chants it immediately develops his loving ecstasy for Krishna. Okay? Yeah. But religiosity, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation are known as the four goals of life. But before love of God, the fifth and highest goals, these appear as insignificant as straw in the street. What is religiosity? Where does he go? He knows. Religiosity means going to school, going to university, right? Doing austerities. So then why is everybody going to school? Dharma? So they can make good money. Right? Everybody goes to Dharma, Artha. And then, with good money, then you can enjoy life. Okay? And after a while of enjoying life, you get sick of it, and you want liberation, yeah. But that's what religiosity means. It means following your duties, being a good father, a good mother, a good student, a good policeman, a good, yeah. And most people do it for economic development. If they stop paying you, how much longer would you work? Prabhupada said, if I had a pill and I gave it to everybody and said, if you take this pill, you will not die. He said nobody would go to work the next day. That's why you're afraid of dying ultimately, That other thing. Okay. But all these different things that are driving everybody in comparison to Panchartha, the fifth goal, is insignificant. Wow. This is confidential knowledge. Panchama Purushartha, Premananda Amrita Sindhu, Mokshadi Ananda Jara Nahi Ekabindu. For a devotee who has actually developed bhava, the pleasure derived from Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha, are like a drop in the presence of the sea. Krishna Namribhala, Prema Sarva Shastre Koi, Bhagye Se Prema Tomoy, Korila Udoy. She got Bengali accent there. The conclusion of all revealed scriptures is that one should awaken his dormant love of Godhead. You are greatly fortunate to have done so. It is a characteristic of love of Godhead that by its nature it induces transcendental symptoms in one's body and what makes one more and more greedy to achieve the shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord. So these are all described. Lord Chaitanya met Rupa Goswami. Where did he meet Rupa Goswami? Where?
First time, Ramkir, first time?
Yeah, but when he instructed him.
Presaka.
Yeah, Dash Ashvamedha Ghat. He instructed him for 10 days, 10 horses, 10 days, okay. And then from that, Rupa Goswami then wrote, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Vidagda Madhava, Lalita Madhava, Ujjvala Nilamani, all based on those instructions. So it's very nice, and of course Nectar of Devotion is a summary study, and Dharma Swami has very nice explanation because of Sanskrit words and so many things. But it's a complete science of how we're actually developing these things. If you take American ice and you apply heat, what happens?
Merits.
If you take Russian ice and apply heat, what happens? If you take German ice, apply more heat, you get steam, more heat, you get plasma. Okay, This is the point. And so therefore we expect then we start looking at other traditions like Christian traditions, Islamic traditions, we're going to find the same stages. And so my own, whatever investigation I've been able to do with help of other people, for example, any Christian saints. How many people here know any Christian saints? Actually know a lot.
Yeah, we know.
St. Louis, San Bernardino,
Saint Augustine.
in California, you know, 30 or 40. Yeah.
Saint Augustine.
St. Francis, San Francisco.
Yeah.
And Prabhupada said he was a lot. Yeah. But you start looking at these different traditions and what's happening. And of course, you know, this is the biggest religion in the world. The history goes back 2,000 years. And for example, what's her name? Santa Teresa of Avila. She's in Spain over there. And her disciple was San Juan de Dios, you know, fellow. And both considered very advanced. And so she wrote a thing called the Crystal Palace. The Crystal Palace, that's the name of one of her works. And she starts off, and she's like this very kind of like jolly older nun, Brahmacharini, you know, very kind of friendly and jolly. But you know, if you get out of line, you know, she can be tough, you know. But she's very kind of nice older Brahmacharini, whatever. And she said, okay, my bishop told me I should write something for the young girls and stuff, and new people coming about what is spiritual life and my experiences, and I don't know if I can do it or not. I'm actually pretty much a big fool, but at least it'll help me forget about my arthritis, so here I'm trying, you know. And she describes it as a palace, a crystal palace, okay? And she says in the beginning, you know, some people, in the courtyard of the count's castle palace, every Sunday there's a market there, and people bring things and sell things, and there's puppet shows and all kinds of stuff, and it's very, very, very jolly, you know. And so this is like the Sunday feast, right? People come and they have a very, very nice time, and there's good food and everything else and so on. It's like spiritual life. I know one person in Denver, and he told me that he and about 5 more people have been coming to the temple for like 20 years, right? And every time over the Sunday feast, they would go to one person's house and smoke a lot of marijuana, wash their hands, and go to the Sunday feast and sing and dance and ecstasy, and then take lots of prasadam. Then they would clean the temple after all the devotees took rest and so on. They've been doing this for like, you know, the longest time. So she says you can get hung up on that platform, you know, and you're seeing it's the same thing, but for her description, it's from a little different angle, maybe a little more modern. She says, okay, then don't just get caught up on that level. Then when Sunday's over and they close the gates, start staying there, you know. And she's describing different levels. Another one is San Bernardino de Clairview.